Somehow it happened in my life that I could not stay at any job for a long time. I could not develop normal relations with my bosses. Either it was karma or my character, who knows? And finally, I became tired of it all, and having quit another job, I decided to find something to be away from my boss and people in general. I was a sociopath, as it turned out. After scouring many websites and job ads, my attention was focused on one vacancy, a ranger in a nature reserve, a large forest area located 70 kilometers away from the city where I lived. The job was not difficult, but it was well paid, and there were all kinds of benefits to boot. If necessary, housing was provided. So I didn't hesitate to call the number indicated in the ad, and after arranging a meeting, I took a bus and went there. After getting off at the right stop, I walked about 2 kilometers along a dirt forest road leading to the house of the chief ranger. Looking at signs along my way with information about the animals living in the forest, as well as warnings not to go too far into the forest and not to litter at the territory. But judging by the cigarette butts and candy and chip wrappers lying on the side of the road, no one seemed to be following these rules. It was the middle of summer, a beautiful warm day. I was enjoying my walk in the woods and realized that this was exactly the job I needed. Walking carefree for a few more minutes, I finally reached my destination. It was a small one-story house with a tall lightning rod on top, gray walls, and bars on the windows. What are these bars for? I thought to myself. Unless, maybe predators sometimes come too close. My attention was paid to the sign with the inscription Chief Ranger. So I knocked on the door and waited. In a moment, I heard footsteps outside the door, and it was opened by a short, gray-haired, bearded man dressed in a camouflage light jacket over a dark green shirt. He wore an army cap and similarly styled pants. His face was tanned and wrinkled. He gave me a quick, stern look and asked, "What do you want?" "I'm here about a job. I found your vacancy on the internet and called to make an appointment for today." "Did you serve in the army?" "No, I didn't," I answered. "Well, it's not critical," the warden replied with a note of disappointment. "By the way, my name is Ivan Fedorovich, and what's yours?" "I'm glad to meet you. My name is Mikola." "So what will I have to do?" I immediately asked Fedorovich again. "Take care of the territory of the reserve and the lake. Put out fires after companies that sometimes like to relax here and generally keep things in order. Come on, I'll take you to the hut where you'll be staying, and you'll understand everything along the way." The man gestured for me to follow him, and I followed him. "Wait until I come back to get some things," and he headed for his house at a brisk pace. A moment later, he came back with a small backpack, a hunting rifle, and a bottle of water. "Now we can go. I'll tell you everything there." And we went to the hut, which was located deep in the forest. On the way, we came across areas with fallen trees, several small streams, and small meadows. Halfway to the hut, we decided to take a break and sat down on one of the fallen trees. I fished in one of my pockets and pulled out a pack of cigarettes, took one for myself and offered it to Fedorovich. Having lit a cigarette, my eyes were drawn to a burned-out hut that was barely visible in the thick of the forest trees, about 30 meters from where we were sitting. "Ivan Fedorovich, what is that burned-out hut among that trees?" I asked my mentor. "There used to be a previous hut where the same warden lived, but one night there was an accident and it burned down," the man answered in a gloomy voice. "But let's not talk about the bad. We need to move on," the man said immediately, as if he sensed that I would ask him about the details of that tragedy. So, after finishing our cigarettes, we got up and moved on in silence. After about 15 minutes, I finally saw the hut where I would spend the night. Fedorovic opened the door and invited me inside. It was quite atmospheric there. There was a small fireplace made of stones with an armful of firewood, a massive wooden table and bed, a few stools, and a small wooden chest with tools and non-perishable food. Fedorovic immediately took out a pack of shotgun ammunition from his backpack and handed it to me, saying, "This is just in case some predator breaks in, but remember, use it only as a last resort. If you follow the rules, everything will be fine." "Do you understand me?" he asked me sternly. "Yes, of course, no problem. What are the rules?" I asked the ranger impatiently. "Sit down at the table and listen to me carefully." I nodded in agreement. We sat down and Fedorovic said, "The main, most important rule is not to leave the hut at night, especially if you hear any strange sounds outside the windows that resemble laughter or giggles. Do you understand me? Do all the work, lock yourself inside, and don't go outside until sunrise." He said all this in a high-pitched tone as if he wanted me to not miss a single word. Okay, I understand. What are those giggles? Where do they come from?" I immediately asked again. Fedorovic's instruction alarmed me and at the same time interested me, raising a lot of questions. But looking at the stern look on his face, I didn't dare ask them all. "Predators are here, you know. Just follow this rule and everything will be fine." "Okay, Fedorovic, I understand. And this is holy water," he added, putting the bottle he was carrying on the edge of the table. "You may think I'm superstitious, but let it be with you, just in case." This intrigued me even more. Something is wrong here, I thought to myself. But I silently nodded to the ranger in agreement. Finally, he gave me a list of tasks to complete today, and after crossing me before leaving, he went away. I remained sitting in the same place, thinking about the old ranger's words, which made me feel uneasy. But I had to go to work. So I got up from the table, took another look at the rifle hanging on the wall, and went outside. I finished my work around 9 p.m. I went back to the cabin and lit the fireplace for the night, because despite the summertime, it was quite chilly to spend the night in a cabin in the middle of a dense forest. According to Fedorovic, since it was not yet very dark outside, I decided to go outside for 5 minutes to smoke and calm my nerves a bit. The fresh forest air brought me real pleasure and peace. I took out a cigarette and, holding it in my teeth, lit it with a match, continuing to admire the nature of the evening forest. After finishing, I threw the cigarette away and was about to return to the hut when I noticed a shadow flashing quickly among the trees, not far from me, out of the corner of my eye. But without attaching much importance to it, I went into the hut, locking the door behind me. Before I could get to the fireplace to throw a log into the fire, my attention was drawn to a sound from the street, which sounded like a cross between human laughter and the sound of a hyena. It sounded so unexpected and eerie that it gave me shivers. I immediately remembered Fedorovic's words when he spoke about the same sound and warned me not to go outside when I heard it. I was both scared and curious. I wondered what kind of animals could be making them. I stealthily approached the door and peered through a small crack, hoping to see the source of their origin. But I didn't see anything there. Instead, I heard the sounds of stomping, as if someone was running fast under the windows and even on the roof of the hut. Fear enveloped me like a small child. I huddled in a corner by the fireplace and tried not to move. Something unknown was scurrying around outside, sniffing, and then began scratching at the front door, and judging by this scratching, the creature had quite large claws. The knocking on the door became even louder. Someone was practically trying to break it down. I found the strength to overcome my fear. I jumped to my feet and started pushing a chest of clothes against the door to strengthen it somehow. Fortunately, it helped. The knocking stopped, and a moment later, on the other side of the door, one of the creatures growled at me in human language. "Open the door. Let us in." Mixed with this eerie voice, there were giggles and some other strange growls and howls that just drove me crazy. Then something happened that made me scream with fear. One of the windows of the cabin broke and the head of one of the creatures appeared in it. In the faint light of the fireplace and a few candles that I had lit on the table, I managed to see it enough to realize that it was not an animal that could live in the forests, but some otherworldly monster, the sight of which made me want to just fall underground in fear. In a rush of adrenaline, I remembered the gun on the wall, and in just 2 steps I ran to it, pulled it off the hook on which it hung, and taking a cartridge from a box lying nearby, shaking hands, just shoved it into the gun, and without even really aiming, pulled the trigger. But nothing happened. I tried again and again. The damn gun was jammed and wouldn't fire. Shit! I screamed and threw it at the monster, which had almost reached through the window into the cabin. I started to sob from hysteria, shock, and hopelessness. I had nowhere to run. These creatures were everywhere, behind the door, outside the windows, even on the fucking roof. I had almost resigned myself to what was going to happen to me, but I noticed something on the table that gave me a small spark of hope. A bottle of holy water that my mentor had given me. Maybe it will help. He didn't just leave it there, I thought. The creature was already about 1.5 meters away from me, with its mouth and long fangs gaping menacingly, trying to bite me. Without thinking twice, I jumped on the table and hastily grabbed the bottle and began to unscrew the lid. I was about to pour water on it when I felt a burning pain in the area of my calf. The creature grabbed me with its teeth and pulled me to the floor. I screamed in excruciating pain, and thank God I didn't waste the bottle at that moment. Turning to the creature, I poured the holy water on it. The creature screamed so piercingly and loudly that it must have been heard throughout the forest. I sprinkled it again, and with one jump it jumped out the window and ran away, followed by the rest of the monsters that were raging near the hut. I passed out from shock and pain right on the same table. I was woken up by a knock on the door and the familiar voice of Ivan Fedorovich. I opened my eyes and tried to get up, which reminded me of the pain in my leg, which had been bitten by the monster. "Mikola, are you alive in there? Open up, it's me, Fedorovich. Open up," the ranger yelled in a worried voice outside the door. I staggered to the door with difficulty and turned the key in the lock and opened it. Ivan Fedorovich was shocked by my appearance. "What have they done here? Did you go out after dark? Why didn't you listen to me? You are very lucky to be alive, boy." He began to scold me. "Don't you want to explain to me what kind of damned soil is here? What is it? Tell me." I began to shout at the old man. He abruptly stopped talking, took off his cap, and sat down on a stool with a guilty expression. Then, noticing my injured leg, he exclaimed, "You have a serious wound there. Why don't you say anything? Let me treat it and bandage it." After that, he abruptly stood up and went to the chest with his belongings, took out a small bag with medicines, and began to treat my wound. "You need to go to the hospital, boy, to be stitched up. Get ready with me right now. I'll take you there." "Okay," I agreed, "but first, tell me what kind of evil spirits it is." "All right," the old man exhaled. "To be honest, I don't know what these things are or where they come from. I only heard from the old-timers who used to live here on the outskirts of the forest that these creatures settled here a long time ago. There is even a legend that a witch used to live in this forest, and they wanted to drive her out of there to take the forest territory as a reserve. So she called these demons from hell to kill people who entered the forest and protect her. She died of old age, but these evil spirits stayed here and continue to hunt people, coming out of the ground after sunset and wandering around the forest in search of victims. And you didn't listen to me. You must have gone outside after the sun went down, admit it." "Well, I did," I said guiltily, "but it wasn't too dark yet. That's why they smelled you," the ranger interrupted me. "And that burned hut, it also has a connection with those demons, right?" I asked. "Yes, my friend. They broke into it once, just like to you last night, and the warden who lived there burned several of them along with the hut, but the poor guy couldn't get out, and he was burned alive with them. He was a good guy. We gathered our things and left the hut in silence, heading with Fedorovich to his car. I still couldn't get over the shock I had experienced last night. I didn't want to come back here again. I kept in touch with Ivan Fedorovic for a long time, until one day he didn't answer my call, and as I found out later, his torn body was found in the middle of the forest, not far from that very hut. Those creatures got to him, too,